And this session, of course, concentrates not on beyond 2060, but what is happening in the next 5, 10, and 20 years. Our event horizon is shorter, but therefore a bit more concrete, because, of course, key to everything that we've been discussing now is what do you put in the tank? How do you propel a plane from A to B? And there are a couple of people out there who already have some answers, and that's for one, Fabian Ziegler, CEO of Shell Germany. He is joining us from Hamburg. Then I have Thorsten Lange. He is from EVP Aviation, Neste, from the Amsterdam area in the Netherlands. And last but not least, Maarten van Dijk, managing partner of SkyNRG. Now let's kick off with sort of the traditional provider. We've seen, Fabian, that a lot of companies, the oil and gas companies, have changed their tack. How far have you already gone as far as the reduction of a net carbon footprint is concerned? Simon, can you hear me? I'm not too sure whether you are with us. Therefore, I'd like to go. Oh, did I say Simon? I meant Fabian, of course. I'm so sorry. Fabian.
Feels a bit strange, doesn't it? Huh?
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry. That must have just sort of got stuck in my mind from the last session. Really, really sorry. Fabian, of course. You cannot hear me?
Doesn't sound like.
It doesn't sound like it. Okay, in that case, could we please switch over to Thorsten until our technicians will have sorted it out? Thorsten, you are the guy for the next couple of years. Until we have hydrogen, we need to have something in between. What is it? How quickly can we roll it out?
Well, thanks, Connie. I hope you can hear me properly. Yeah, I'm sure we have a product already available. I mean, the HEFA technology that everybody has heard about is already available, and that is already answering the question, can we start? Yes, I think we can start. I mean, it's a long journey that we're all on, but I think we also can all agree that we have to start now and that we must not waste any longer any time, because scientists have given us a limited time frame. So we have a technology, it's called the HEFA technology, that also already has feedstock as a base that we can use to ramping up the process. And nobody would expect, and nobody can even also afford to switching to 100% renewable, sustainable aviation fuel in the coming years. But a staggered process, we can certainly support as Neste, together also with our competitors that are also working on that HEFA technologies. On top of the HEFA technologies, and I think we come to that later, there is certainly more waiting in the development pipe when it comes to using feedstocks like municipal waste, lignocellulosics, and even algae. And only after having consumed all of that and having worked on that, then comes the next stage what everybody is talking about, and this is the famous power to liquid. We are also working on power to liquid, as everybody does, but I think everything has its time, and we have to work on those things in parallel.
Thank you very much. And as I was pointing out in the question, I was asking for the intermediate time until we really have A, those planes, and B, enough green hydrogen. Maarten, your answer, SkyNRG is concentrating on renewable energy sources, on renewable aspects that can go into aviation fuel. Tell us how far you are in actually bringing enough supply.
I have to admit that I did not hear the full question because Fabian was trying to make clear that he doesn't hear anything.
Yeah,
So
our technicians are working on that.
I know,
we're
but I didn't hear the question because I heard Fabian speaking as well.
Rightio. Well, that's a good thing about technology. Sometimes panelists can actually hear each other better than I can hear them. So Thorsten, in his answer, was actually pointing out that the kind of sustainable fuel that was bridging the time until we have hydrogen is already out there, and it is not about the competition between food and feed, as we had that in the past. I was asking how far at SkyNRG you are in bridging that gap, in supplying energy that is sustainable for the time until we are really on the hydrogen train.
Yes,
or plane.
I understand the question. We've been supplying sustainable aviation fuel since 2011. We see that the industry is taking initial steps to scale up that supply, and with that proving delivery through existing infrastructure at airports using existing engine systems. I think global capacity now is in the range of 20,000-30,000 tons a year. That's still relatively small if you compare it to an airport like Schiphol or Frankfurt, where they use 5 to 8 million tons of fuel. But the good thing is that it can be done. We can use existing infrastructure and engines. We have serious CO2 mitigations, more than 80% if you use waste-based materials. And this is a sort of the first necessary steps that the industry is taking, and we're playing a part in this. We've been pioneering a lot of this sustainable aviation fuel work since 2010.
Thank you very much for that. I hear Fabian can not just hear me, but he can also communicate via telephone. So never mind which means, as long as we get into our conversation. Fabian, I was saying earlier that the big oil companies are changing their tack. They are already invested in sustainable fuels. How far has your company come up to now, and what's the drive for the next couple of years?
Yeah, thanks for this question, Connie, and my apologies for a little technical glitch here. Indeed, I mean, my company has increased its CO2 commitment in a big way. Just on the 16th of April, in the midst of Corona, we committed to essentially become a net zero emissions company latest by 2050. And as you can imagine, this is even more true for a country like Germany, for which I'm responsible for. This is industry, this is transport land, and we have a very large footprint here. And in fact, we don't see ourselves an oil company in this country. We define ourselves as a decarbonization partner to industry and, of course, to the aviation sector. We just issued a very substantial CO2 ambition to reduce our footprint and our customers' footprint in country by 30% by end of the decade. And this is round about 10% of Germany. So that's a very large commitment. To do this, we have to play the full piano. We have to make use of many technologies. We will work for all sectors in country. And the key component for us is hydrogen. And we really want to become a hydrogen leader in country in terms of marketing it, in terms of producing it, but also in terms of importing it. And in this context, I want to refer to the transformation of our Rhineland refinery, where we have a PTL project, which is designated to the aviation sector. We undertook a feasibility study. And indeed, the ambition is to produce here substantial amounts of sustainable aviation fuel. And it's not an easy plan. As you can imagine, the economics very challenging, and we will need help. And we think the European Green Deal is a great platform. But I mean, sustainable aviation fuel needs a decisive action plan. we need support on CapEx, we need support on OpEx, and ultimately we also need a level playing field with a substantial CO2 price. So really a situation where all of us are needed in a big way.
Thank you. And Thorsten, I think my next question would sort of pick up from the European aspect again. When we talked, you said it's doable, 55% by 2030, net zero in 2050. There are white papers out there. There is a new RED directive in the offing. So many are already invested. Yet, to bring it about that we really meet the goals by in 10 years' time, what do you say is needed? 1, 2, and 3. What are the 3 most important aspects that are needed?
I would say regulation, investment, trust. This is 1, 2, 3. I mean, Fabian was mentioning it earlier. It is a big project that we have ahead. Neste has been one of the front runners and the first movers to investing without having the certainty that the industry needs, the demand certainty that the industry needs to investing more in our whole project here. As said, the problem is not the feedstocks. As long as we manage to being feedstock neutral, technology neutral, and we're accepting that there's already 7 pathways on which we can produce sustainable aviation fuel. If we keep our minds open, this is not the problem. The problem is that, and you mentioned RED II, that RED II is adopted by the member states and gives room and gives, most importantly, demand certainty by providing regulatory environments that would encourage investors to pledging money to those projects. Then we will have plenty of volume available to achieving our goals in 2035 with the neutral growth and even the zero goal in 2050. I'm 100% sure, because the base feedstocks and the base material I was referring to earlier are there and would already, just thinking for a moment, we would have all those feedstocks available and the technology is ready. The feedstock is enough to totally replacing the world demand on fossil jet.
So much, Maarten. I'm quite sure that you would have to say 1 or 2 words on that, but let me look at your mission. And you actually say to make sustainable aviation fuel the new global standard. How?
I think this is a game where every single stakeholder has to play its part. So we cannot do it by ourselves. Neste cannot, Shell cannot, European government cannot. We have to make sure that in an open, clear, and transparent dialogue, decisions are taken to create an enabling environment focused on sustainability, safeguarding, and regulatory stability to have every partner in its comfort zone where it can play it, and maybe a little bit outside, but that can play its part to invest, to offtake, to take risk, to be part of this energy transition. Do not exclude any partner. Do not exclude any options. We need them all. Don't do any biased regulatory frameworks that put a preference over a certain market. Make sure that we approach this in a fully holistic energy transition way. And I think it's not just industry and government. I mean, when I say everybody, it's also the airlines, it's also the airline customers, it's the corporates, it's the individual travelers, it's the airports, it's the NGOs. Everybody has to play its role.
Thank you so much. If I sounded or if I looked distracted, of course, there are many more things going on in digital conferences than just talking to your panel. So Fabian, I know that you've got a couple of examples, maybe sort of done in Germany, where you already live that promise of going in the direction for sustainable aviation fuels.
No, it's not a matter of Germany here, but sort of our approach in the aviation industry is sort of threefold. There's a piece around avoid CO2, reduce CO2, and there's a compensate type of element. I think the avoid story goes very much with hydrogen, with hydrogen ultimately becoming the fuel of choice. But in reduce, it's really about sustainable aviation fuels, which is a sector we are very, very committed to, and we work with many partners, and there's indeed a raft of really great examples. Just in November this year, we spoke about a collaboration with Rolls-Royce, where it's about testing sustainable aviation fuel as a drop-in option. So it's really laying the foundation for this fuel to be certified. Also with Neste represented here very prominently. I think there's a collaboration combining Neste's production strengths with Shell Aviation's global network reach. There's also a collaboration with World Energy, where Shell Aviation supplies fuel to Amazon's air cargo operations. So there's a raft of sort of specific examples of collaboration, and we believe we need many more of these to really make this the standard in the industry, which we are very positive will happen.
By what time can, and this is a question to all of you, and I just want the number of a year, by what time could you all together supply the industry with sustainable aviation fuel? 27, 28, 2030? And Maarten, maybe hazard a guess?
I'm going to be ambitious. I'll say 2050. No more fossil fuel per 2050. Real net zero.
Okay, real net zero. Thorsten?
I would be even more ambitious. As I said earlier, we do have enough feedstock and raw material available. And let's assume for a moment that also PTL would kick in. I would see us more in the mid-40s rather than the 50s. Right. Maybe even earlier, 40.
Fabian, hazard a guess.
Well, we do it to some extent already, huh? And my ambition is perhaps a little bit selfish, but I spoke about this project Rally Plus in the Rhineland refinery. So we are working very consequently towards this plant going live 2025, 2026.
Okay,
and for it
plant,
to make for a high quality sustainable aviation fuel for our customers here in country.
Thank you very much for your commitments, and we're going to talk about that in 2040, but I think you're going to have a different moderator then.